Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso were two of Formula One's most infamous colleagues and teammates, but they will measure their forces in different teams beginning in 2023. What is a huge disappointment for the rest of the world is how Ocon treated Alonso, who was a two-time champion with Renault and the last one for the team, now known as Alpine, with such disrespect. Still, the Frenchman continued with his shots towards the Spaniard, and after Alonso was probably the most responsible guy for Ocon's maiden win last year in Budapest, the Frenchman doesn't seem to like his now former teammate as much as he is supposed to. Ocon and Alonso were appointed as teammates in 2021 when Ricciardo left the team for McLaren and Alonso came back from his sabbatical. Ocon was already at Renault, as his sabbatical was in 2019 when he was replaced by Lawrence Stroll at Force India. While the 2021 season was bad compared to McLaren and Racing Point, with them finishing 5th in the Constructors' Championships, these two guys managed to beat McLaren and finish P4 in 2022 and claim the title best of the rest. Still, there were scuffles between them as Ocon and Alonso's battles began in the season's second race in Jeddah. Alonso was clearly much faster, but for some reason, Ocon didn't want to let him through without a battle, which is why they lost a lot of time to the cars ahead. In Budapest, the situation was very similar, and Ocon refused to let Alonso ahead even though the Spaniard had the better start and was faster when Ocon exited the pit stop. In Brazil, the situation escalated yet again, with Ocon and Alonso clashing and Alonso losing a piece of his front wing. Although many thought that Alonso was to blame because he didn't steer right on time, Alonso blamed Ocon, and when the race ended, Alonso said that, finally, he is out of the team. But on the other hand, Ocon also blames Alonso for his actions and his tenure at Alpine. When talking about the time that he had with Alonso, Ocon said that it was good satisfaction to beat Alonso as his teammate for the first time, further elaborating, "It feels good, I would say. He's a very, very fast driver. I had to put up my game as much as I could. To finish in front of him is good satisfaction this year," said Ocon, who further went on to wish Alonso good luck in Aston Martin and saying that he helped him push his competitiveness to a whole new level. Still, Ocon didn't stop here. He continued to talk about why the team struggled so much, further adding that Alonso was doing just 2% of the job in the team and that most of the duties were put on the Frenchman's back. It's a bold stance to take against a two-time world champion like Alonso, and rest assured it didn't go unnoticed from the media, but Ocon stood his ground with his opinion, as he further added, "It is true that I was disappointed by what Alonso said in the press, but kept to himself internally. I still respect him, but it is good that he is going to Aston Martin, and that we each go our ways. To be honest, I did 98% of the work, and he did 2%. I was overworked. I did all the development work in the simulator, and I also did the marketing activities. It's straight up disrespectful to talk about your teammate like that, let alone if your teammate is a two-time world champion who is solely responsible for your only win in your career, obtained last year in Budapest. But still, Ocon is a fierce guy, and although he may not be the fastest driver out there, he does have the talent, and from next year on, he will measure his force against Gasly, who is eager to prove he can perform in a top team environment. But we'll get to that later in this video. For now, let's see what Ocon has to say about Alonso. These two had their ups and downs in their relationship, and while Ocon wasn't able to defend like a lion, like Alonso requested from him in Qatar in 2021, they were still good friends. However, their relationship has deteriorated to the point of no return in 2022, and it's very likely that whenever these two meet on the track again, fierce duels will ensue. Still, Ocon said that after Brazil, he had lost some respect for Alonso, and while he still respects him as a two-time world champion, he doesn't like what Alonso had to say about him. "If I reflect on these last 2 years, it's been great. I have a lot of respect for Fernando and for what he's done in F1. He's one of the legends of the sport, but I was pretty disappointed with what he had to say in Brazil. I'm not at his level of experience, but like any other drivers, you learn, especially with a new teammate, because they have different ways of working. It's been interesting to work with the world champion and see what he was doing. Obviously, Ocon was able to learn a lot from Alonso, but the fact that Alonso wasn't really satisfied with how his car performed throughout the race days says enough about the treatment of both drivers on the same team. After the DNF in Mexico, Alonso was really furious and added that it's only the car with number 14 that is struggling to finish the races and doesn't finish them at all. To this, Ocon had a fierce response, adding that he also had DNFs, such as the one in Silverstone, where his gearbox broke and forced him to retire. Alonso could hold a grudge against Alpine given the fact that they treated him like an option and liability, and not a proper two-time world champion. That is why, with the first opportunity that he was presented, he left the team for Aston Martin, a team that has found its groove in the second half of the season and is even looking to strike bigger in 2023. With new facilities and personnel, Aston Martin hopes to return to the midfield and potentially challenge McLaren and Alpine for fourth place in the Constructors' Championship. They couldn't have found the better guy in Alonso, and who thought that Piastri would be placed in his seat. And with fate playing in the way it did with Alonso, Alpine and Piastri, everyone got what they wanted in the end. Now, Alpine and Ocon have another problem, and that's fixing the relationship between the two Frenchmen who used to be the best of friends but are now struggling to keep communication at a high level. Gasly and Ocon used to be friends ever since their karting days, but due to an old conflict and beefs, their families aren't really in a close relationship now, and the same goes for the other drivers as well. Alpine has realized their dream of having an all-Frenchman lineup, but this does not come without consequences. Finally, they have a driver that is more than motivated to prove himself and bring valuable points to the table. But on the other hand, they have Ocon, who doesn't want to be outperformed and usually applies pressure and fights when they are not needed. Alpine has discussed the potential scuffles between Ocon and Gasly, with Laurent Rossi adding that he will not tolerate any kid stuff between these two drivers, and that each of them should understand that they could be fired for silly reasons. That is something that both drivers have in mind prior to their first season as teammates in 2023, and we are yet to see how they will face off in the same machinery. The facts speak for themselves, and as of now, Gasly is the better driver compared to Ocon. Although they have nearly the same stats, it's worth noting that Gasly performed with a car that hasn't really proven to be competitive, and yet he won a race in Monza in 2020 with it. Ocon also won a race in 2021, mostly thanks to the help of his teammate, but other than that, he has a couple of podiums and that's it. That is why many think that Gasly would absolutely outperform Ocon, and he has already lost the #1 seed in Alpine even prior to the season starting. On the other hand, Ocon is overjoyed to finally work with Gasly, and he believes that their old issues will be forgotten now that they have both achieved their common goal of competing in the highest level of racing, Formula One. What do you think about Ocon's statement on Alonso? Do you think the two-time world champion deserved what he was dealt from Alpine and Ocon? Also, what do you think about the potential rivalry between Ocon and Gasly? Let us know in the comments below.